Okay, so in the next part of part 2 of Atonement, we get Robbie again retreating to the coast, to Dunkirk, which is what had to happen in 1940 when the British forces were forced back through France. And we get him sort of reflecting on what's happened to him, and we get a real destruction of a lot of the images that we've had in part 1 to reflect that destruction of childhood innocence. I think the first bit that's worth looking at is on page 217. About halfway down, we're told that it seemed another man's life to him now. So the past was like another man's life. A dead civilization. First his own life ruined, then everybody else's. And that's that thing that McEwan does throughout. The focus on Bryony's lie or mistake alongside the war. The context and what's happened to people at the time and the destruction of innocence due to the war is forever linked with Bryony's stories and Bryony getting it wrong. And that also creates destruction. And then what we get a little bit lower down at the bottom of that paragraph is Robbie, basically a family driving through and honk the horn as Robbie's marching, and he just has this build up of anger and grabs out. So we're told Turner grabbed the man by his tie and was ready to smack his stupid face with an open right hand. So we've got Robbie lashing out, and what's he lashing out at? A family. Okay, so there's that parallel between the Tallis family who sort of harmed him, and then his own anger that sort of comes back. When we get onto page 219, there's another little image about a third of the way down. Minutes later, they pass 5 bodies in a ditch, 3 women, 2 children. So again, destruction of family. But it's again just treated as an everyday event, isn't it? 3 women, 2 children. It's just listed. Okay, I think you could argue that this is foreshadowed earlier on when Jackson and Pierrot were reading Bryony's play, and we're told it sounds like a list of dead people, and here we just get a list: 3 women, 2 children. So it's every day. We're told a little bit lower down, about halfway down page 219, it was hot now, some men were letting their greatcoats drop to the ground, a glorious day. So just like part 1, there's this heat wave, it's that, similar weather but a world apart. The bottom of page 219 we get something really interesting to look at for language, form and structure. Robbie's rhythm as he walks is matched with the sort of metre that McEwan puts in. So we're told he walked across the land until he came to the sea. A hexameter, 5 iambs and an anapest was the beat he tramped to now. So a hexameter just means 6 sort of pairs of syllables. Iambs are groups of 2 syllables in which the first syllable is unstressed and the second is stressed. So he walked across the land, etc. An anapest is a 3 syllable sort of foot, so to the sea. Okay, so the rhythm of Robbie's feet is echoed in the rhythm of the language here. So everything sort of links here, doesn't it? Robbie's, struggling to move, which is echoed in McEwan's language that comes into the book. Again, language is crucial to this, isn't it? And here, the language puts us very much in Robbie's mind. Okay, the language is used to bring Robbie back to life, which is exactly what Bryony's trying to do. On page 220, basically this Major comes in and tries to get the men to fight behind him, and we see the destruction of the class system. So the Major would be an upper class man from a higher sort of class background, and he's going in, but he's basically just foolishly fighting. There's no point, and it's a suicidal mission. So his destruction represents that destruction of the class system. So on page 220, about 2/3 of the way down, we're told he had a little toothbrush moustache, so a tiny little moustache that's a bit of a mark of upper class people. He's got small tight lips, he's got a clipped word, so he's got a really upper class accent. But that's linked with real stupidity. So what does he say? He says, we're going to get in there and flush him out. Okay, that real confidence that they can win, which is essentially a suicidal mission. So we get this destruction of the upper class characters. Okay, it's foreshadowing that breakdown of the class system. What's interesting is on page 223, how they get out of it is that Robbie can talk to this guy like an equal. So about halfway down page 223, he says, actually, old boy, to tell the truth, I think we'd rather not. Okay, so that Turner phrase, old boy, I think we'd rather not. It's that sort of upper class way of speaking that Robbie has picked up from the Tallises. So the language and the fact that he can flip between these worlds actually helps him. As the class system's breaking down, his ability to flip between classes is helping him. We're told at the very top of page 224, the sergeant with the rifle was hit in the face and was not expected to live. Okay, so quite literally that class system is destroyed. There's somebody else on page 225 who is killed about 5 or 6 lines down. The 3 men lifted the boy down and set him on his back. Clipped to his shirt pocket was a row of fountain pens. So again, it's an instrument of writing that's linked to this body. So it's Bryony's ideas as a writer is linked to the war. Both of them have caused this major destruction. And a couple of lines after that, Nettle says, nice looking kid. So again, we get the idea of destroyed innocence that is followed throughout the novel. We're told that basically Robbie's thirst is mixed up with these weird images. Basically his septicemia is causing him these hallucinations. And he sees the map and he sees the blue line, and he almost gets the blue line mixed up with the water itself. So we're told about 2/3 of the way down, he would put his face in that blue and drink deeply. This thought put him in mind of childhood fevers, their wild and frightening logic, the search for the cool corner of the pillow, and his mother's hand upon his brow. So again, as his madness sort of ensues, he's going back to these childhood memories. When we get onto page 226, towards the bottom, we get a list. Okay, Robbie's memories, basically, we're told that they're totally separate. It's a totally different life. We're told it's before prison, before the war, before the sight of a corpse became a banality. So there's that repetition of before, that parallelism across the sentence, the same sort of structure that shows that loss of innocence. Before. It's another time. And that last bit, a corpse became a banality. That's how part 2 starts, doesn't it? It's a leg in a tree that's treated like it's every day. We're told at the top of page 227 that once he gets out of the army, he has hopes that he could become again the man who had once crossed to Surrey Park. So it's like Hard Times, there's this hope of redemption that's there all the time, but things are never quite the same. Robbie is changed here, and obviously as it turns out at the end, he didn't actually survive. When we get on to 228, we're told that obviously Bryony has also, regretted a decision, and Robbie reflects on that himself. We get here she was offering a possibility of absolution, but it was not for him. He had done nothing wrong. It was self for her own crime which a conscience could no longer bear. So that basically Robbie knows that she's offering forgiveness, but he's also very aware that Bryony is guilty and trying to remove her own guilt. That comes back at the end where Bryony has the two lovers survive in a novel, but she doesn't let them forgive her. And we get Bryony's guilt echoing throughout this book. We're always aware, once we know the twist, that this is Bryony's eye, Bryony's eye view of what's happening. On page 229, towards the top, we told Bryony and Danny Hardman it was not unreasonable or just to hate Bryony, but it helped. So again, we get Robbie, saying phrases like hate, that real destruction of innocence. But also he makes the same mistake as Bryony. He blames the other lower class character, Danny Hardman. Okay, so we get that idea that even though the class system is fracturing, that people are still sort of thinking in that way. He doesn't blame Paul Marshall, he assumes it's Danny Hardman. On 231, Robbie has this memory of Bryony jumping in a river and he has to rescue her. And he believes that she got an infatuation and that's why she's fallen in love with him. And it's nice to look at it as a bit of an echo of the fountain scene. We're told about 1/3 of the way down, to his surprise, she was holding her breath and then she was laughing and clinging to his neck. He pushed her onto the bank. So again, we get that image of water, that image of him saving her, which is very, very similar to the fountain scene. We get that innocent image, but that's tainted by what happened later on. And that comes in really well on page 233, about halfway down when he remembers her in a dirty white frock, just over halfway down. She's barefoot, but the frock is dirty, again showing that tainted innocence. And finally, we're told at the very end, just before the break on page 234, he would never forgive her. That was the lasting damage. So Bryony's real guilt is shown by the fact that it's Robbie who's changed. Robbie has lost his innocence. Just like Louisa, who can never have children, Robbie will never be the same again.